Hey everyone, it's Katie from Just Claying Around. For today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this Rubik's Cube charm. First, you'll need to start with some black clay for the base of the cube. Roll it into a ball and then begin to shape it into a square using your work surface. Start by pressing it down and making one side flat, and then start rotating it around until you have 6 flat sides. Keep in mind it won't look perfect to begin with. It'll always have a bit of a rounded edge to it, but the more and more that you do this process, the more it'll start to look like a cube. Now carefully use your knife to cut all 6 sides to make them nice, flat, and make the corners of the cube sharp. Next step is to add an eye pin to the cube. It doesn't matter which side, anyone will do, just as long as you pop it into the middle. Then it's ready to bake, and once it's cooled down, you can begin to add the colours. Also, you can remove the eye pin. This will be popped back in once you add the colour to that side. For the colours, I'm using blue, green, red, orange, yellow, and white. Start with the white clay first. This is to avoid colour contamination from the other colours. Roll it into a ball and then use an acrylic roller to roll it out really flat. If you have a pasta maker that you use to roll out your clay, you can also use that instead. It's important to roll each colour out as flat as you can, otherwise when you start to add them onto the cube, it'll become too chunky. Now use the cube to place gently on the white clay, and then use your knife to cut around the edges to measure up the perfect size square. Then use your knife to cut a little bit extra off around the edges. The reason for this is so that you're going to be able to place the cubes once you've made them a little bit of ways apart so that you can see the black down the centres of each piece. Hopefully I explained that well enough so that you'll be able to understand what I mean. If you do have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments. I always love to hear from you and try to help you guys out as much as I can. This part can be a little bit tricky to get right as you're wanting to cut 9 squares out of this one square and making sure that they all come out nice and even. Basically, cut 2 lines vertically and then cut 2 lines horizontally across to make these 9 squares. It's also important not to mix these squares up. They will need to be added onto the face of the cube in exactly the same way that they've been cut so that they symmetrically all line up nicely on the cube. Now add 9 dots of bacon bond to one of the faces of the cube. Then carefully use a silicone tip tool to add each square to the face of the cube. Use the tool to press it down gently, securing it to the cube, and also use the edge of the tool to straighten up around the edges of the square. Being flat, the tip of this tool makes it really useful to add the gaps in between each of the squares as you're adding them so that you are able to see that black line in between all the 9 squares. You can also use a needle tool to help straighten them up as well. Now follow the exact same process for all the remaining 5 colours. Now bake it and wait for it to cool down before adding the next colours. Also remember, at some point while adding the colours on, one of the sides is going to need to have the eye pin added back in. For me, I chose the green side, no reason in particular, this is just the way it worked out when I was filming. Now this mini Rubik's Cube is ready to bake. Also remember that the eye pin will need to be glued in and secured before you glaze this piece. If you're like me and use UV resin for glazing, you can also use that to glue the eye pin into. This has been one of the longest tutorials that I've made so far, and also probably one of the more complicated ones. If you have any questions at all, I'd love to hear from you. Just leave it in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for next week's video.